Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is the third Thursday webinar. We basically get together once a month and talk about some kind of interesting issue in energy policy or analysis, modeling, technical issues that are important to us. I wanted to let you know the next webinar will be Thursday, September 20th at 2 o'clock, so you can mark your calendars. And we don't have a topic yet for that, so feel free to suggest something that you might be interested in, and we will arrange it for September or some future month. I wanted to let you know that this webinar will be recorded, as the past ones. So we've been doing this now for a year, and there are webinars on climate and finance, strategic electrification, rate design for electric vehicles, all kinds of interesting issues with good presenters. Those are available on the website. Those are the past webinars. Today's webinar will be posted probably next week sometime, so that would be accessible to, if it's so good you want to share it with your friends you missed it, you will be able to do that. During today's webinar, everyone will be muted. That's just to make it an orderly conversation, and we're not talking over each other. But we do still want to hear from you. So as we go along, please email questions. So any comments or questions you have, you can email to webinar@synapse-energy.com. You can also use the chat feature in the WebEx software, but in general, we prefer you to use the chat feature for technical problems. If you're having some trouble with the seeing or hearing things, then you should chat and let us know. We'll try to get that fixed. If you have substantive questions, email them to webinar@synapse-energy.com. We will be fielding those and organizing the questions and posing them to our today's guests, the presenters, who are Dave Dayton, who's the chairman of Clean Energy Solutions, Inc., and Jeannie Ramey, who's the executive director of Climable. They're going to be talking about some microgrid projects that they've been working on, and let's jump right in. Take it away.
Great. Thanks, Bruce. And here, if you're looking at your screen, here's the agenda. These are the 4 areas that we will cover today. And I think of this as more of a discussion, so definitely please send in your questions as they occur to you, and we'll try to address them quickly. So Dave and I have been working together on community microgrids for over 3 years and are really enjoying it, and I think making some traction. The slide you see there is what we call the Climable Consortium. So once we started going down this path of what seems to be a pretty complex area, we sought out colleagues who were doing interesting work that we felt would be able to contribute to our planned projects. And that's the organization that you see there is basically our team of folks all over the country who are working with us on microgrids that are being planned here in Massachusetts, and then just the broader concepts that we're grappling with. So the inspiration for the community microgrids that we are working on came a lot from Dave, and the idea behind it is that microgrids have long made sense for large industrial campuses, for university campuses, for large customers who have benefits that they can reap from investing in these advanced technological miracles, really, of setting areas across. So microgrids being islandable and being able to stay up in emergencies. We really believe that if there are benefits that accrue to these wealthier and larger customers, that really those are benefits that ought to be available to everyone. And we all know there are underserved neighborhoods that where the folks are not able to come up with the upfront capital that is required to do a lot of these improvements, but that really should not be a barrier to having access to clean energy. So this idea really combines a few ideas of low-income and middle-income communities, underserved communities, having access to benefits, and also the idea of energy democracy, that people ought to have a chance to choose their energy source and participate in decisions about their energy use. So there are a lot of revenue benefits that Dave is going to get to later, but when you think about low-income communities, often they are environmental justice communities that are already hit harder by higher rates of asthma and respiratory diseases. So getting clean energy into these neighborhoods will have societal benefits that go beyond the actual neighborhood, but also on-the-ground benefits. So if you think of outages in heavily industrial neighborhoods, you know that one thing that happens quickly is a lot of backup generation goes on. They're often diesel-fueled. So really, they're exacerbating problems that are already pretty serious. So we're thinking that having clean energy powering these microgrids will be a benefit. The uninterruptible self-service is really important if you think about the outages that happen during climate events. Often people are unable to communicate with loved ones that are not local, and so being able to have that service up and running is really important, and being able to have a place to charge those cell phones is also essential. So we also think a lot about the regulatory side of things, how utility of the future, or grid mod in some places, and power sector transformation down in Rhode Island is really combining a lot of goals that are consistent with our microgrids. And so, again, having every neighborhood be able to participate in supporting the state goals of, that are consistent with these new technologies is really important. We are also hoping that our model will create some local jobs and other revenues that Dave will talk about, including peak shaving, demand response, and that sort of thing. So I think I'll hand it over to Dave for now.
Okay, hi, I'm just getting over a cold, as you can probably tell, so forgive the raspiness. It's not meanness. Jeannie has mentioned the first of three principles that I wanted to start with. There are lots of microgrids in the world. The world seems covered with them these days. We keep reading about them. But if you think about them, they're almost all campuses or malls or long streets along a radial utility line where all the subscribers are what we might call electrically contiguous. They're connected to each other. And so I can throw a switch at one end of the street or one side of the campus, throw a switch at the other when there's an outage, turn on generators in between, and we have what we call a microgrid. That something is over 100 years old. This is not to denigrate any of the projects, but what we've tried to establish are three principles of a true community microgrid. And Jeannie's talked about the first one, which is true neighborhood leadership. We want the benefits to be defined by the folks who live there. We want them to measure whether we've delivered them or not. We want them to take the lead in design decisions, in securing vendors, and in operating the microgrid. That is rare. And I say we because I've been a renewable energy plant developer in this country and overseas for a long time. We tend to impose our design on the neighborhood or the presumed beneficiary with our wisdom. And we've already learned from working with folks in our communities, which are at the moment Chinatown in Boston and Chelsea, Mass. We've already learned how much we have to learn about what we should be doing. That's principle number one. The second principle is we have to accommodate non-contiguous subscribers. Most low-income communities don't live along a nice tree-lined street or on a particular campus or even in a large housing authority. They may be scattered around the city. They may be on area networks rather than radial utility lines, and so they're hard to reach. So we have to provide a design that accommodates folks who are not next to each other electrically. And the third principle, which is essential to us, is we want to make this last. It's got to be sustainable in a commercial world, and therefore we need to optimize the revenue streams that are possible from a microgrid. So we've got two modes, right? When the grid goes down, which hopefully is very rare, but we all know it's going to increase in severity and frequency. When the grid goes down, we have one mode. In that mode, we want to have, in every subscriber facility, a backup battery, some access to additional generation for longer-term outages, some control of the load, and the ability to sustain communication and have access to transportation, probably through electric vehicles. That's the grid down mode. The grid up mode, the normal mode, which is most of the time, what we want then is to optimize the economics such that we can generate enough revenues, enough net revenues to supply all the equipment we need for resilience in the microgrid. So those are the three principles: neighborhood leadership, non-contiguous subscribers, and optimization of revenue streams. The slide you're looking at now is a picture of this design. We've shown multifamily housing, small nonprofits, and small businesses, which tend to be where we like to start. But there also would be public safety facilities and schools and really commercial subscribers as well, depending on where we are. The important thing here is that they're joined not by wires connecting them, the AC grid, but through a cloud-based aggregation system in which we can control three resources in every facility, the resources being their battery or storage, their generation capacity, and their load management. If I can dispatch those, to use a utility term, in every subscribing facility, and I end up with thousands of facilities, as Mary Powell and Green Mountain Power has in Vermont, I've got a virtual power plant. And I can dispatch it, I can access it when the grid is up through cloud-based aggregation algorithm. That pays for a lot. We'll get to the revenue streams later. The other thing that I've sketched in here is in some cases we'll be close enough together so we can make some DC links that don't cross streets. And those are perfectly permissible and allow us to connect computers and other things. The other thing this slide shows is how do we optimize, how do we do this optimization? There are a lot of examples. NREL developed a platform they call ReOpt for renewable energy optimization that's online, which is quite user-friendly. Berkeley Lab developed DERCAM, Distributed Energy Resources Customer Acquisition, I forget what M stands for. And the developer, or one of the developers at NREL of ReOpt then formed his own company called New Grid Analytics. He's on our team, Travis Simpkins, and he's designed a model that he calls Red Cloud, so I put that on our list. And of course, if you go on the web, you'll find a dozen scholarly articles proposing different optimization routines. And there are a lot of proprietary models. We've actually signed non-disclosure agreements with outfits like STEM and Sunverge, AMS, and others, excuse me, who have their own design. Okay, the next slide, whoops, shows a single facility. I did this because it allows us to list the assets, and they're the source, of course, of investment opportunity. And you can see, looking around the house, it's more likely to be in our neighborhoods, of course, multifamily dwellings and neighborhood health centers and so forth. But you see all the assets pictured there, and I listed them in a little side box. And the question is, what do they add up to? When we did the first Chinatown group of buildings, we made a back-of-the-envelope calculation. I think it came around 7 or 8 million of investment, and for Chelsea, I think it came around 15 million. Those are not fixed numbers or even meaningful numbers because this is entirely scalable. There are no envelopes around it. But this is what a single facility would look like, and of course, these present the resources that would be dispatched by our algorithms. Now, I've claimed that we can pay for this by optimizing the dispatch of those resources in a virtual power plant, so to speak, in normal times, that it's so good for the utility and other beneficiaries that it will make money. The Clean Energy Group has done a great job of describing this in a number of webinars. You can go back and look at theirs. I think they had one called Resilience for Free. And of course, Amory's group, Rocky Mountain Institute, always discovers that everything good is for free if you look at it properly. And so we do have some people in back of us. I'm going to suggest 14 value streams that help support this. And the trick with a value stream is to turn it into money, right, to monetize it. So here are the first 4. They're relatively well established, given counterparty collaboration. The first is what we can do, especially with our batteries and supporting the grid. We can support the 3 things in an AC system, right? The frequency, the voltage, and the phase. They can be regulated, and utilities and ISOs pay a lot of money for the regulation, often by large standby plants. Be done much quicker and simpler and cheaper by batteries if you've got enough of them that you can aggregate. Now that requires cooperation with the ISO and participating in their markets. And there are other wholesale markets that we'll probably try to go into that we listed there also. So those are pretty well known. PJM has done a lot of this. ISO New England is a bit behind, but are struggling with the regulations. New York, California, a little bit in the Midwest, and Europe and Australia and other places. The next one, really big one, of course, is, and this is often the most mentioned in microgrid descriptions, so we can avoid a lot of costs by reducing the peak load at peak times. In most of the country, that's in the summer and a hot afternoon in July. Some places it's in the middle of winter. In this country, the ratio of the total installed electric generation capacity to the actual average need for it is almost 2 to 1. So there's a huge investment in power plants that are needed just for peak hours, and often they're only on for minutes at a time. We can do that a lot cheaper, and that's where one of the big value streams comes from. It's valuable to whom? To the utility. It's valuable to the customer. When the customer has a tariff that includes a demand charge, it's valuable to the ISO through their wholesale markets. And the fourth one, of course, well known to the ESCO industry, energy efficiency, is easily done in most urban facilities in ways that will pay for themselves quickly. And not only that, but increase health and the increased evaluation of buildings. So those are fairly well established. The next 2, if we can do that, thanks, have large value, but the monetization requires some innovation. But think about the value of avoiding the cost of grid failure in repairs, in lost revenues, and in life and health threats. it's enormous. And we don't have a good insurance product for that yet. And that's a potentially very large monetization opportunity. The second one on that short list is, of course, the environmental benefits. We hope to have a robust carbon market soon, so we can sell it directly, and other environmental benefits will be captured other ways. And finally, we can sell, on this page, energy commodities if we install CHP or even Trigen as part of our design. Now I have another page with 7 more of these guys. You might as well list them all because we don't want to take too much time on this. But you can scan through them and see there are other things that we can sell. We plan to do some lease and service of some of these products and, that would capture commercial customers. Tax benefits, of course. Utility access is interesting. If you read through the Rhode Island PST, they do a great job of suggesting to the utilities that they can make a lot of money through new markets, which could be accessed by the power sector transformation, a different way of operating. And we also note that if you have a tenant metered building, all of those customers are hidden to the utility. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. If you have a master meter building, you have 1 meter on the multifamily building, all of the folks there are hidden from the utility site. They're behind the master meter. They're opened up by this design. So there's a lot of utility benefits to that. And accommodating intermittents like wind and solar and black start and ramping and non-curtailment and so forth. In addition to what Jeannie mentioned, the new jobs and economic development opportunity. And finally, we want to be in the electric vehicle business for emergency use.
So, excuse me, Dave, I have a question. You're talking about on the last 2 slides, the value streams of either revenues or benefits, or both. And what are your thoughts about the investment side and kind of who would own and finance some of this?
Yeah, so I come out of the ESCO industry, and when I was running an ESCO, I would have loved this. The bigger the better. The more assets we can put together, the lower the transaction costs, the greater the margin. But I think also, if you look at a place like Vermont, you've got Tesla supplying the batteries, which are leased by the utility. So there's another investment and ownership model. I think vendors are a likely participant, and some of the larger suppliers and distributors, all of whom see the profit potential in this. Okay, let's run through quickly how we assess these things. We've got to worry about 3 things. We've got to make some financial projections that show this really will work in the real world. And by the way, we've received, our 2 communities have received grants from the Mass Clean Energy Center to do a feasibility analysis. They've hired Jeannie's organization, Climable, to do the technical work behind that. So part of that is we set up a parametric model. Excuse me. And it sets up for each of those assets, what's the investment level, what are the, and therefore the debt service, what are the operational costs, and of course, what are the revenue projections year by year. So we've got to do that and make it work. Secondly, we've got to get collaboration from a bunch of important people. I listed the utility, the ISO regulators, the city, of course, legislature if we have to develop some new public policy initiatives, which we will, and of course developers and contractors. So we have to define as part of the feasibility study, what's the collaboration we need? Does it exist under present authority, or do we need new public policy, and how do we go at that? And finally, we want to reach commercial customers, paying customers. We're probably in the leasing business in a large sense, with a scaled lease payment for the low-income folks, little or no payment. For high-income folks, full commercial payment and scaled in between. And and we have large assets which can be leased and serviced, and very trusted local partners that can market that. So we need a marketing plan. So those are the three things we're doing under the CEC assessment, feasibility assessment. Okay, sorry to drone on so long.
That was great.
And Jeannie will wrap up.
Yeah, that really helped. So, thanks. That was a lot about what we are doing, and here's a little bit about who is doing it. So, you saw earlier the larger technical team. This Resilient Urban Neighborhoods, the RUN team, is the technical team working on these 2 community microgrids in Massachusetts that Dave mentioned. And so all of these people are Boston locals, and you see Climate Action Business Association in there is working with local businesses on understanding resilience and getting participation. So this group, again, has been working together for more than 2 years, and when we were developing the plans and knew that we wanted to work with low-income neighborhoods, we really did understand that neighborhood leadership had to come in as soon as possible to help us understand the needs of the community and figure out how to get those benefits. And so we were introduced to the Green Justice Coalition, which is a network of about 40 community groups in Massachusetts, and all of those community groups do some environmental justice work. So the Green Justice Coalition is convened by Community Labor United, a Boston organization, and is supported also by Clean Water Action. And of those 40 community groups, there were 2 that, when hearing about the microgrid project, really had the interest and availability and the bandwidth to commit to these projects. There's just a ton of learning, and those 2 groups are Green Roots in Chelsea and the Chinatown Progressive Association in Chinatown. So it's been almost 2 years now that those groups that we've been involved with them, and together we applied for and won this the grant for technical feasibility study for the microgrids in Chelsea and Chinatown. So a little bit about those communities. So Chelsea is just across Chelsea Creek from Logan Airport, from East Boston, and it's a very densely populated, high immigrant community, definitely an environmental justice community, 90 hazardous waste sites, countless industrial sites. They serve the entire Boston area, and in many ways, one way is they store all of the jet fuel that's used at Logan Airport. Another important site there is the New England Produce Center, which is a hub of where most of the fresh produce that is distributed throughout the entire northeastern United States goes through this one facility. So if they are without power, it's a really serious problem. So Chelsea is prone to flooding, and it is the folks there are very sensitive to the threats of gentrification. And as we've, I think, mentioned already, one of the core principles of our microgrid is that we want for people to be able to prosper in place. These are folks who may be immobile due to disability, maybe immobile because of language barriers, maybe because of poverty or health issues, and we want folks to be able to stay in their homes. Once people are displaced, there is the real danger that they will never be able to return to their homes. So this is a really important benefit for this community to be able to stay home even if there are extended outages, and that's one of the main things we're trying to support them on. Chinatown is another densely populated area, another high immigrant community, and they face a lot of the same challenges that exist in Chelsea. One of the real differences about Chinatown for this project is what Dave mentioned earlier, that they are served by an area network. So there is the uphill challenge of working with the utility on figuring out if there is a way to overcome the barrier of having renewables generating in this area network and feeding back to the grid. Right now that is a 0% possibility to happen today, but there could be a future in which that technical challenge will be solved, and we're hoping to at least contribute to the solution there in Chinatown. I don't know if you have anything to add about Chinatown specifically.
Well, we do have the support of the local utility, Eversource, that sent a nice letter to MassDEC, and with whom we're talking next week, as well as the mayor's office in Boston and the city manager in Chelsea. Very strong sponsorship.
That's true. So one thing that's really great about working with these community groups is the leadership. So these groups have they've been organized for quite a while, and they have very close ties, lots of membership within the community, and they're very in touch with the needs, and so are very communicative about how they would like to see things unfold in their community. So if it isn't already abundantly clear why microgrid is a good idea in some of these neighborhoods, this last slide just talks a little bit about why disruptions happen. It's pretty clear that climate events are becoming more frequent and more severe. So this slide actually is from a Synapse report. 94% of service disruptions are from weather-related impacts. They are most often due to transmission and distribution disruptions. We know that low-income communities are more vulnerable to the problems caused by these climate events. This last bullet point is from CABA, that just in the 3 months from January to March of 2018, the nor'easters cost businesses $950 million in sales. And I think that wraps up what we have to say for now, but we'd love to hear questions.
So Jeannie, you talked about the organization for these the studies going on, the development, but what about once the, assuming these projects are successful and they get implemented, how do you see the organization at that point in terms of who owns what and how are decisions made?
Well, they're thinking about different models in Chelsea and Chinatown. So in Chelsea, with great relationship with the municipality of Chelsea and with the understanding that access to energy is a public good, we are hoping for a municipally owned microgrid, municipally owned and operated. Again, this is dependent upon a lot of cooperation with the utility, because honestly, a lot of the benefits flow to the utility. So they will be a partner for sure, but I think that's what we're looking at.
Probably some sort of public-private partnership that this city would be a member of, yeah.
Right. And then in Chinatown, they're looking at a cooperative model. So Chinatown Progressive Association is decades old and has a long history of being involved in major projects in Chinatown, and so they are hopeful that a cooperative would include other neighborhood organizations and building owners, and really the theory here is that the leadership has to come from within the community for the real benefits and the real needs to be met. So that's what we're looking at.
And in either case, I just add one comment. In either case, to the extent that the organization revenues exceed its cost, it can dividend or share in distribution of that. So it adds to the trust factor a lot.
So Dave, you talked about the concept, the design, the technical concepts and all, but when it comes around to actually specking out the details, engineering and design and then the installation of equipment and so on, who do you see doing that? How do the roles work there?
Well, we're picturing that these organizations, whether it be a co-op or a PPP or some other form that might be most appropriate with a given neighborhood, we're expecting that they would issue RFPs for contractors, vendors, general contractors, ESCOs, and others who would detail the design and write the plans and specs. We're not going to try to do that from here because we're talking about, tens of millions of dollars. But those would be written on speculation by the potential bidders during the sort of audit phase.
Jeannie, you touched on why these two particular neighborhoods, but could you speak more to like why your process and why these neighborhoods, and are you looking for others?
Sure. So these issues are way too complex for me to understand, for most people to understand. It takes a lot of time to invest in figuring out what is right for the neighborhood. So the fact that these two groups have stepped forward and said that they do have the time to commit and really are just doing a ton of work to that end is why we feel really great about working with them. And the truth is, yes, we are open to other neighborhoods. We're open to other communities coming to, and we've met people in Rhode Island and other municipalities in Massachusetts who've asked us to collaborate. There are challenges. The funding of this initial phase is that's one small challenge, but the fact that our model is easily replicable, I think really opens up the world. So yes, we're definitely open.
Yeah, we've made a commitment that the first dollar we raise always goes to the community.
So Dave, of your three principles, the second had to do with the kind of non-contiguous subscribers and the cloud-based idea. One question is how would that work, the cloud-based microgrid, in terms of coordinating load and information with the utility?
So the utility really is the partner that would do the dispatching. If I'm a utility, I want to be able to have access to these resources, to distributed generation, storage, and load management, which we're making available to them. It's a great value. It gives me what we've called, of course, a virtual power plant. So it would be the utility that would operate that algorithm. We just want to design it so it works to optimize the economics.
Thanks. Another question about the kind of the role of utilities and regulators in planning. So we've got these microgrids, and are utilities or regulators thinking about incorporating these microgrid concepts into their integrated resource planning and kind of long-term capacity planning? If so, how, and what about the tools and methods, if you know?
I think so. I think distributed energy resources are a big part of all the grid modernization dockets that I've heard about. And I know here in Massachusetts that the DPU has an internal microgrid working group. So I don't think there's any question that this type of installation should be included in a utility's IRP. The bigger question has to do with how will the utility interact with the communities where they're envisioning these.
Mm-hmm. That was a good topic for future webinars.
Yeah.
We'll come back at that one.
That'd be great.
You mentioned the legislatures and possible new public policy initiatives, and just kind of as a placeholder or a note. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts at this point about what kinds of things that what are the categories of topics, or kind of what might be necessary in terms of sort of rule changes, or is it too soon for that?
Well, we could probably make a long list of potential public policy interventions. An example might be the wholesale markets right now tend to operate primarily with very large public players, utilities and others. We might want to set aside in these markets, whether they be regulation markets or energy capacity or whatever, for distributed and small and possibly community-based bidders, so that the market isn't immediately saturated by a few large players. That's an example, and we could probably make a long list. Another webinar topic.
Yeah, it's a little bit like maybe net metering, where there's a certain amount that's specified. So I think I have just one more question. Well, a couple more. One is this being done anywhere else? Is it unique in the communities and your project, or are other people trying the same sort of thing?
I mean, there's no technology here that hasn't been done somewhere. We're not inventing anything. There's no magic. What I think has not been done anywhere else is the combination of those three principles: the neighborhood leadership, non-contiguous subscribers, and optimization of all these 14 potential revenue streams. There's some that have come close, STEM and Sunverge and others in Australia, for example. The Brooklyn project folks have read about that is blockchain-based, has a similar approach. But it's absolutely doable. There's nothing new. It's just putting together these components, and probably the hardest one is starting with the neighborhood organization that is truly representative of the people.
Yeah, my next question was going to be, or I guess is, what's the most challenging thing about what you're up to? It sounds like maybe that's it.
That would be my goal. What do you think?
I'm on the same page. I think that the utilities and communities and community groups have a long history of disagreeing and worse. And so getting everybody to the same table, first of all, just to agree on the basics is the first challenge, but then actually sorting out the details of ownership and control and all that, I think is what we're facing as a really difficult challenge.
Yeah.
And what's the most fun and exciting thing about this for you?
The people are really interesting. I mean, this network just goes out many, many layers, and we've met people who are really working hard and who have passion about their communities and about the environment, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, the people in the neighborhood, absolutely. And it's amazing how much we learn from them when we think we're so sophisticated technically. And we meet regularly with the community groups, and they really, truly are in the lead.
Well, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to call it at this point. Everyone on the phone, be sure to mark your calendars for the next Thursday, which I think is September 20th at 2. I don't know what the topic will be, but it'll be interesting. This webinar will be recorded, or has been recorded, and will be posted. So you can find that on the Synapse Energy webinars page. If there are questions that you didn't get a chance to, that you think of later, you can still send them. We're not guaranteeing that we'll answer them, but we'll make a good faith effort. And I really want to thank Dave Dayton and Jeannie Ramey, and basically wish you all luck. And
also, I just want to point out that our contact information is available on the last slide. Despite the lack of funding, we still really are interested in hearing from people who are already working on these issues, who are interested in working on these issues, or who see that it's being done better somewhere else. Just let us know. We're learning.
And Climable is a 501c3 organization.
Feel free to donate.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.